Alright guys, today we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. Still along the lines of writing equations, but first we got to have the conversation about parallel and perpendicular lines. So this top portion up here is just dealing with how we define it. Alright, when we talk about parallel lines, they are lines that do not touch. Here's an example, here's an example, here's an example. Alright, note that parallel lines have the same slope. Alright, that's the main thing I want you to get out of this. When we're talking about parallel lines, they have the same slope. Since they don't touch and they go in the same direction, they have the same slope. Now, when we talk about perpendicular lines, right, notice how they intersect at a 90-degree angle. Alright, they intersect at a 90-degree angle. So the main thing I want you to note about perpendicular lines is that when we reference the slope, they have opposite reciprocal slopes. Opposite reciprocal slopes. So you may say, what do you mean by opposite? We mean opposite signs, right? That's the opposite part. What do you mean by reciprocal? Flip the fraction. Okay, that's the reciprocal. Whenever you say reciprocal, that means flip. All right. So here in these examples, it says find the parallel and perpendicular slopes for the following. So if we have a half, right, and we want the parallel slope, remember parallel lines have the same slope. So the parallel slope would just be 1/2. All right, when we're talking about the perpendicular slope, remember perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So we change the sign. Instead of it being positive, turn it to a negative. All right, and then the flip fraction, instead of it being 1/2, it becomes 2/1. 2/1 is just 2, so we're going to write -2. All right, so I'm going to get you to help me along with 7/8, right? If it's parallel slope, which means same slope, our parallel slope for 7/8 is, 7/8. All right, perpendicular slope. Perpendicular slope, you take the opposite sign, and then you flip. So this becomes 8/7. All right, and we're going to continue along the line. 5, right? If it's for 5, the parallel slope would be just 5, because remember parallel lines have the same slope. All right. The perpendicular slope would be the opposite sign, so negative. And remember, a whole number can be written over 1, right? So the reciprocal is going to be 1/5. All right. Now, what about if we have -4, right? Parallel slope is going to be the same, so -4. Perpendicular slope is going to be the opposite sign, so instead of negative, it's going to be positive, right? And then the reciprocal, 1/4. I want you to try 1/4. Feel free to press pause. So the parallel slope is 1/4, and the perpendicular slope is -1/1/4. All right, now that we're at 0, of course the parallel slope is just 0. And when we talk about the perpendicular slope, any whole number can be written over 1. So that would be 1/0, but -1/0. The thing is, we can't have 0 in the denominator. That's a no-no. So this would just be said to be undefined. This is undefined slope. All right, an undefined slope. Well, what about when the slope is already undefined? Well, we know the parallel slope is undefined as well because it's the same slope. But since we know to be undefined means is some number being divided by 0, the perpendicular slope would be the opposite reciprocal, so 0 over a number. Negative 0 is just still 0, so we don't have to tag on the negative in this situation. So 0 over a number is still just 0. So there we go. All right. Hopefully you got the idea about parallel and perpendicular. So when we get to these examples here, all right, for each one, we want to determine the slope on the graph and then determine the parallel slope and perpendicular slope. All right, so remember when we're given a graph, we take 2 points, 1, 2. All right, this point A is -3, 1, and the point B is the point 4, -2. So when we're looking for the slope, feel free to put it in a table or put it in your calculator because we know how to do that now. The change in y here, we go down by 3. Here, the change in x, we go up by, looks like 7. So our slope is -3 over 7. If we want to find the parallel slope, remember that means same slope. So that's also -3 over 7. And the perpendicular slope is, we change the sign so it's positive and flip the fraction so it's 7 over 3. See if you can do example 2. All right, so when we look at example 2, point J is -1, -2, and point K is 3, 3. Find our slope. We can put it in a table, these points, and find our change in y, which this is increased by 5, and our change in x, which it has increased by 4. So it's become 5 over 4. The slope of this line, parallel slope would be the same. And the perpendicular slope, opposite reciprocal. There we have it.